creating a 3D illustration in an app called Mental Canvas.
Hi, I'm Diana, the artist behind Mimic Doodles. Welcome to my channel.
Mental Canvas is an app where you can convert your 2D artwork into a 3D scene. This app is available for both iOS and Android devices, and you can find it in your App Store under the name Mental Canvas Draw. If you check out their website, you can see they have different tiers, like for different price points. I'm using the promo version, which is free, and it doesn't seem to have like an expiration date. I've had it for about a month and it doesn't show that it's going to expire on any particular time like some other free trials do. It looks like it has all of the features, and I don't seem to have encountered any like restrictions as far as using like a free demo version. So let's just jump in. I've opened my app and you can see you start out with like this blank canvas. And at first it can feel a little bit intimidating to know like how to manipulate the different things, how to import different scenes and 3D objects and things like that. So they have this nice tutorial section. If you go up to the menu and you click tutorials, they have all of these different tutorials that you can kind of follow along with, and they're pretty short and like reasonable. So when you click one, it will open up the tutorial with a little YouTube video in the bottom of your screen here, and then it helps you like follow along and kind of learn how the app works and how to manipulate your different layers to make them in different dimensions. And I found that really helpful when playing around with the app rather than just like diving in and not knowing how to use any of the features. So I followed along with a lot of these tutorials, and I would recommend you do the same. In this menu, there is also a shortcut where you can click scenes, and it'll give you kind of like a template to work with for starting your own scene. So it'll open like the file on your iPad wherever you saved Mental Canvas, and you can push create a scene. And then it has these templates that you can use to just kind of have like a jumping point to start your own scene, so you don't have to create the different layers to make like the different walls and the different angles. So if you click like room, for example, and then you can see it has imported this nice template into my canvas that I can just quickly just start drawing on. And it makes it a little bit easier, especially when you're first starting out, because you don't have to take each layer and manipulate it to make it different angles and in the foreground and the background. They've already done that for you, so you can just jump right in and start creating. And you can see it has a guide layer here that says like left, back, floor, right, and you can just turn that off when you're done so that it doesn't show up in your final project, and just start drawing right into your document. So that's a great way to start out if you're not sure how to use the app. Even after I followed the tutorials, I was still finding some things a little tricky. So I started with this and it was really helpful. So let's just use this really quick and I'll show you a couple of things to get started with when you're drawing directly in the app, because you can draw directly in here or you can import drawings you've already created, such as in Procreate, which is the app I use for drawing. You can do either way. So let's just do a quick rundown of if you're drawing directly in this app, how you would manipulate your different layers and things like that. On this back wall, let's just draw like, I don't know, some picture frames. So here is my brush. You can choose from these different brushes. There's like a monoline kind of pen, pencil, marker, pen with like a nib, and a brush. Just going to use, I guess, this like monoline kind of pen and make it a little bigger so you can see what I'm doing. So something like that. You can also choose from colors. You can use custom colors if you want to choose from your color wheel. And so you could draw directly in this app if you're comfortable with it. So let's draw on this back wall. I'm just going to click this to get the menu out of the way, and let's just draw some picture frames. Okay, so I have my little drawing. This app is really hard for me to draw in. Don't judge me by my terrible drawings. So I have my drawing all on that wall called back, or on that layer called back, I should say. And you can see it's all in one layer. You can make different layers here just by opening up that canvas called back and then making a new layer and drawing something in that, making another layer and drawing something else in that. I had a little bit of trouble with that because sometimes it would still act as if it was all on one level. So I'm not sure what I was doing wrong. So I didn't bother to do that part. So I just drew it all on one layer. So it's all in this first layer here. And what you can do is select the areas you want. Like, say I want, this is me. Don't you recognize me? So I'm going to bring myself up more into the foreground and kind of keep like the picture frames hanging on the wall. So up here you'll see there's a brush or a camera. The camera, it kind of lets you move around the canvas so you can see the depth of the different items, and you can see it's all on one level. So when I spin it around, it's all perfectly on that back wall, like perfectly flat. Well, I want to bring myself out a little bit. So what you can do is go to this brush and then I just want to select me. So you go to this selection tool there, and you can either do like the lasso or the brush. If you do the brush, you just kind of like scribble over the area you want to pick up, and it'll pick up me. Or you can tap on it, but you kind of have to like, it captures like everything. I guess it would be like the same color tone. So if it's black, like it'll capture the whole thing. But since I made myself like a bunch of different colors, it'll only pick up like that exact tone. So that's not the best method for something that's multicolored like this. So you can either scribble over it or you can use this lasso and just select the area you want. And since it's not overlapping with anything else, that works. If it was overlapping, like if I made myself a little bit over those frames, it becomes a little bit trickier. So you might need to do the thing where you tap on just the areas to pick up like just my hand that is different tones than the black frame. But anyway, so I have myself selected. And then I can go over here and kind of move it around to make it different angles and stuff. So if you choose this one, you can see it kind of looked like a tall building or something, and you can like raise it up. So here is a view of your canvas from like the top down, so you can see how far out you're scooting this object. So I'm pulling it more towards the foreground. Just by sliding my finger down, it'll bring it closer to me. So I'm going to scooch myself out like, I don't know, maybe like right there, and then click the check mark. So then you can see if you go to your camera, you have her like scooched out a little bit. So she's standing like more in the middle of the room, and you can kind of like scroll around to see if it's where you want it to be positioned. And then the picture frames are still like flush against the back wall. Like maybe you want to make like wallpaper on the back wall or something though, and then have the frames like scooted a little bit away from the wall. Or you could use the same method where you scooch them out with the this option here, just like a little bit. And then if you were to draw wallpaper or something on that back wall or like windows or I don't know, something like that's going to be flush against the wall, your frames are a little bit out. And you can now see over here in the canvases, when I scooted her out, she became on a new canvas. So she is her own canvas now. And I found that kind of helpful when drawing in the app. Like if I had elements that I knew were going to overlap, I could draw just like a little like a spot it's something I'm not going to keep, but just so that I have a marker. And then I pick up that little like spot there. Just use this select and scoot it out a little bit or angle it however I knew it was going to be. Like if it's going to be something for the floor, I would flip it down with one of the other options. Let's just do this since we've already covered how to scoot things out. So I would like scoot it out a little bit. And then I know I have a new canvas there that I can draw on. That's going to be like a little bit out from the wall. And I know where it's positioned. Otherwise, it's kind of tricky, like especially if it's something that's going to overlap with the picture frames. Like, I don't know, let me just put like a Christmas tree. So I'll go back in and I'm now on the layer with like my marker, like the little spot. And let's just grab green and draw in something that's going to be like away from the wall a little bit. So something like that. And then you can just erase out your little marker and it should be in the same plane that that little red marker dot was, and it is. So I found that kind of helpful when drawing in the app because it was getting a little confusing to know where things were going to lie. And like if I wanted to draw something and then move it into a different plane, it was a little difficult for me. So I started using, like, I finally discovered I could just write like back, and that would be like my marker, and I would know that's the layer that's all the way in the back, or side, and then just select it like I did with my little red dot and adjust it to whatever plane I wanted it to be in, and then that would be my marker. So if I wanted to draw something on the left wall or the right wall, you can just go over here to the canvases and click left and then your paintbrush, and it will take you over to this side. And you could do the same thing where if you wanted to have like an object that is out from the wall, you would just draw something in and then use this selection here to scoot it out into the center of the room or off from the wall a little bit or whatever. And you would do the same thing for the right. They also included the floor, so you could just like paint it in like a floor color, like maybe it's like a wood floor, and just to draw the rectangle here. You can scooch out if you need to, and it has a lot of the same gestures that other apps like Procreate or Adobe Fresco uses. So you can just use the paint bucket to dump the color in the whole floor. And you could do the same thing for the walls too. And then they have the ceiling as well. So you could draw like, like a chandelier or something on the ceiling. Well, I guess you wouldn't want to draw it on the ceiling part because it's not going to hang down the right way, but you could draw like the crown molding thing and then go to the back wall of the canvas and draw in the chandelier hanging down like maybe in a new layer. Let's try that because I don't want it to go over top of those paintings. So let's just draw like something like that. And then you could scooch it out from the wall a little bit. So I have it selected there. Do you see how it is moving the paintings as well? So that's one thing I have not figured out, how to prevent that from happening. So it's supposed to be where you can select just this area. You could do it just by like maybe tapping, but it still sometimes picks up stuff that you don't want to scoot out. So I haven't quite figured that out. So then that my workaround was where I just draw like that little dot and pull that into the frame where I want it to go, and then just work with that as my layer. So let's try that again. So I'll just draw like this little dot here and then select that and use that same option where you can pull it out into the center of the room, and I can see where my like crown molding, I can't remember what that thing's called, but the thing you can put on the ceiling around the light fixtures. So I can see where that is. So I'm just going to pull it out to the middle there, and then I know it's in the like center of the room and not against those frames. And then I can just continue drawing in that area there without worrying about it pulling my chandelier, my picture frames out into the middle of the room. So I go back to the camera mode so that I can access my canvases and then just click on my little marker, my little dot, and just use that as my point where I'm going to draw my chandelier. So I'm in that canvas now. I know I'm not in the picture frames, and I can go back to the paintbrush and just draw in my stuff, and then it goes into the middle of the room. Another cool thing would be if you could make it 3D, so when you swiveled, it's not a flat light fixture, it's like 3D. So you could do that by utilizing this left or right wall and then just kind of like scooting it to the middle of the room again, like kind of like what we just did with the back wall. So maybe make like a little marker, my little dot, and then go to my canvases, make sure I'm in that area with the dot, and then select it. So to select it, you go back to the paintbrush mode and grab the selection tool and just tap on my little dot and then scooch it into the middle. If you need to move it, like how it's not in the center, you can just use that tool there to move it around. You can also resize it with that too. A transform tool, that's what it's called. So I have my little dot selected, and then I also want to bring it forwards to the middle of the room. I think that's lined up there. Nice, you can kind of zoom in. Yeah, that looks good. So then I know it's in the right position and I can just draw in like the rest of my light fixture there. Want to make sure I'm in the canvas that has the little marker, draw in that layer, that canvas. So it's a little tricky kind of, you kind of can get lost in this whole web of like all these canvases and layers. I also get a little bit thrown because the fact that it's like layers within canvases. So that is like kind of a little adjustment for me since I'm not used to drawing in like three-dimensional space. So I have my thing and I want to erase my little marker. I think the biggest thing for me, which was confusing at first, was switching between this camera mode and the brush mode. And it still can be a little bit confusing. Sometimes I want to draw in this screen and I have to go back to the brush screen. So the camera mode is mostly just for like selecting which layer you're in and stuff like that. So I think once you get the hang of that, it's not bad. And these don't line up, but that's okay. We can just go back to select that layer and kind of like scooch it over a little bit, and that's pretty close. You could keep playing around with it to get it lined up perfectly, but that's pretty close. So you get the point. And then you can see how when you swivel around the canvas, you now have like a three-dimensional space, which is really fun to play around with and pretty interesting, especially when you can incorporate like a scene you've already created and make it look 3D. You can also export like a little movie. So they have this down here where you could take pictures from different angles. Like it starts out with this head-on view, and then you could kind of like zoom in a little and snap a picture. You could angle it a little bit and take a picture from like up there, and maybe it would be cool if it had like a doorway or something, like you're walking into the room, and you could do that in a new layer and like bring it all the way forwards and make it like a doorway where you're walking in. And they have one like that in the tutorial. So if you're going through and watching the tutorials, you'll see how to do that also. But you can take like these different snapshots, and then when you press play, you have this little movie of your scene. If you like your movie and you want to save it, you can export it as well. So you can go up here to the menu, press export, and then just save your video. So let's try one with our own artwork. So I'd like to do a quick scene where I import all of my own artwork that's pre-drawn. I've already exported it as PNGs and have all of my files saved onto my iPad. I created all of my artwork in Procreate. So I'm just going to import it. I don't have to draw anything within the Mental Canvas app. As you can see from my previous drawing, it's really difficult for me to draw in there. So I would prefer to draw on something I'm more comfortable with and then just import my artwork. So if you would like to do that, just make a blank canvas and let's just call this YouTube scene. And now I have a completely blank canvas to work with. It only has that one canvas. It does have a foreground and a background layer within the one canvas, but it won't be set up for you like that other one with all of the angles and everything. You could also import your artwork into that one if you wanted to use those like predefined canvases that are already set up for you with all the dimension and stuff built in. If you would like to import your art, you can just click this image icon and import your art. I want to import this gingerbread house and maybe the snowman, and I had some snow that I drew on a layer and export it as a PNG, so it'll just be like the flakes of snow without any background or anything. So I'm going to import those three images, and I'm just going to leave it at 2K max. You can do full resolution and play around with these options, but I'm just going to leave mine alone. You can also resize your images. I did them all three at once. I assume it would like resize all of them. But if you do one at a time, you can like make, if you had a background like a sky, or I had mountains in this scene before when it was a flat drawing, you could make the mountains like really huge and the house little. So you can play around with like the twisting it, like if you need to be angled or something like that and when you import it, but you could also do it later when you select that layer and then it had that transform option. So I've got my gingerbread house, my snowman, and my snow. And let's just select this gingerbread house. Push the select option, and this time I can just tap on it and it selects the whole thing. And then I can kind of like scoot it back a little bit because I want it to be in the background and then the snowman and the snow to be more in the foreground. So I just like to check it as I go to make sure. And then my snowman, he's like floating. So I want to scoot him down. I'm just going to go to that layer, and you can see it's also its own canvas now because the app knows to put the gingerbread house on its own canvas now that I've kind of like arranged the depth. So it makes it its own canvas. So my snowman is separated, so that's good. And I can go back to my select tool and just tap on my snowman. He's needs to be scooted down, like maybe there, and probably scoot him out too, like more towards us and more away from the house. So something like that. And then let's just go back and check, and that looks good. And my snow, I kind of like levels of snow. So I would like to make a couple of layers. Since my snow is white, it's really hard to tell which layer. So I guess it's this one with the icon that has the image icon. And let's just check. Yeah, that's this stuff. So then you can kind of scoot it around. So I'll just click my image icon and just grab a couple of layers of that same snow. It's easy enough because I have it saved. So let's just put it on here, and this time maybe I'll make it a little smaller so it doesn't look like it's all the same scale. I want it to be like lots of different levels and layers of snow. And then maybe we can scooch it in between those two, and let's see where it's placed. So I'll put it in front of the snowman because I like how that looks, and then it makes it more interesting to have like lots of layers of snow, and maybe one more layer in the back behind the gingerbread house. And you could also draw in these snowflakes. That would be pretty simple too since they're just white dots. So it looks pretty good, but I think we need a sky and a ground. And I think they already had these canvases set up for foreground and background. Yes. So I'll do the background as my sky. So let's just grab like a grayish blue. I'm gonna go into the background layer, grab my brush, and maybe this big paintbrush to save some time, and a really light color. I should do my trick again where you just make the box and then fill it in with the paint bucket. And if you need to resize it, you just grab it and use this tool to make it like really big or smaller or whatever. But since it's the sky, it can be really big. And then we'll just scoot it to the background because for some reason it like came into the foreground even though it was marked as a background layer. So I'm not sure. There's some things I haven't like, totally figured out yet. And my box also became its own layer, but I'll just delete that back out. And let's just check it, make sure it looks good. That looks pretty good. And then we need like a snowy ground. I wonder if we could just use this foreground and like flip it down. There's this option here where you can flip something like to the side, or if you change the axis, you can flip it down or up to make like the ceiling or the floor, like in our other project. But for some reason, sometimes it's grayed out, and I also have not figured that part out. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's grayed out. Um, so I'm not sure, but I've noticed when I import an image, it lets me flip it. But sometimes when I draw it doesn't. Like it'll only let me use this one, which angles things. So it'll angle it like this way, but it doesn't go to 90 degrees. Like it maxes out. See where it turned red? It maxes out at like a little beyond 45. So I'm not sure. I haven't figured that part out. But I'm just going to try it and see if it works this time. I'm just going to use their foreground layer and color in the ground and just see if it works. Let's make it a different color so we can see what we're doing. So that is the color I just used. Let's just grab something a little bit lighter so that it's just slightly different and we can see what we're doing. And it looks like it will let me flip that. So that's good. So I'm going to click that and change my axis to like a perfectly horizontal line and then just see if it can flip down. And you can see how much it's being turned right here with this angle. So I want it to be like 90 degrees, like it's the ground. And I think that looks good. You can twist a little here to change your camera angle so that you can see a little better. And I think that's good. And then we can just scoot it down so it's not cutting into our house. And so let's just go back here and select it. Okay, so I got my ground selected and I can just scooch it down a little bit. You can see where it's going here. I just kind of wanted to be like almost flush with the bottom of the house. Let's see if we can zoom in here. Maybe just like that, where it's kind of just covering the very bottom of the gumdrops and kind of like flush with the front door. So maybe like that. And then you can just go back out to the camera and check it. And now you can see the snowman, he's floating. So we'll just scooch him down in the same way. It's hard to see on a white background. Um, and for the ground, I had to do a little bit of like troubleshooting and manipulating because somehow it like reverted to go in the background. It was flat against like the back wall. So I just went back into the foreground layer and just painted the snow back in. And it seemed like it did work where it flipped it down, but I don't know. It seems a little quirky. Like somehow it moved itself to a new layer and was like in the background again. So sometimes it takes a little bit of like just messing around in the app to get things the way you like them. I don't necessarily have like a definitive answer for everything in this app. I'm certainly not an expert. Just thought I would share what I've learned so far because it's pretty fun to play around in it. So the last thing, let's just scoot our little snowman back down so he's like in the snow. And I have them selected and use the tool that transforms or like where you can move things around the screen. So if you notice, I had them selected, but sometimes it like goes back to a different canvas, which is what happened to me with the ground. So I had them selected and I moved them forwards. And then when I was done with that, it went back into this canvas, which I believe is snow. So you just be careful and always check which canvas you're working within so you don't move stuff around that you don't intend to, or like you think you're transforming or moving something and it's actually moving something else. It could be a little frustrating if that happens to you quite frequently. So I just want to go back into this canvas with the snowman, make sure I'm in there, and then go to the brush and then select and see if we can just scoot him down on the page a little until he's like in the snow. There, I think he's meeting. I'll put the snow there, like how it's, I can see there's like a little overlap. So that would be good. Let's just check it, go back to the camera, and now he's on the ground. So that looks much better. So I also just discovered a really easy way to add a canvas that is angled a certain way. So if you're in this camera view, and let's say I want to put one like perpendicular, like of snow, just angle it and then push plus, and it's going to place the canvas right there, and you can scooch it forwards, backwards, and so that would be really helpful when you're trying to draw like sidewalls or something from the side angle, instead of having to draw something and scooch it exactly into place like with that little marker like we did with the chandelier. It would be way easier just to turn your canvas, push the plus sign, and then add your plane in like wherever you want it. So I'm going to add some snow here, and I should be able to just draw within that canvas, like draw snowflakes or import my snow. So I'm going to try it both ways. So I'm going to add my snowflakes and just make sure it worked with the little camera icon, and it did. And then let's just try it on the other side just to see um, how it would work if you drew it in. So I'm going to push plus to add a new canvas. It's perpendicular to my gingerbread house, and just pull it back a little so it's not right through the middle of the house. And let's just try it with drawing in snowflakes with little dots. Okay, and that appears to be working. So then let me go back to my camera and just check. Yeah, that works too. So I'm sorry I didn't realize that earlier, but that would be a way easier way to make elements that are different, like angles and different levels. Like especially if you're doing something like snow, then you could just keep angling your canvas over and over again and making different levels, so it looks like this really like cool snowy scene. I hope this tutorial was fun for you. If you post your work on Instagram, you can tag me at MyMcDoodles so I can see your artwork. Let me know what you think in the comments below. You can check out this video next, and be sure to subscribe before you go so you don't miss out on the next fun tutorial. Thanks for watching. See you next time.